And now we've got, as I say, this triple whammy, not only one of the biggest quakes of all time, but that horrendous killer tsunami, and now all the problem with a half a dozen nuclear plants, including breaking news in this hour, what may well be a meltdown in progress. I don't want to say more than I know, but the news was disturbing, to say the least, from Fox News' Rich Johnson. To Merritt Island, David, you've got a personal stake in this tragedy in Japan. Let's talk about it.
I do, Bud, and my sister and brother-in-law are missionaries halfway between Misawa and Sendai, so they were in the direct path of that earthquake. They're fine. They have electricity 2 hours a day. They do have well water, so they're good. What interesting thing is that my sister was telling me was that when all the vending machines have trembler systems in for earthquakes, so after an earthquake, the vending machines open, and you don't have to put any money in them. And she said there's no panic, there's no people looting, there's people, you walk over to a vending machine. If you need a cold water or Coca-Cola, you just press the button and it vends for you.
You mean that they are purposely designed so that if you have an emergency, a disaster like this, an earthquake, which they get with great frequency in Japan, that all of a sudden that nourishment becomes available? That's part of the plan?
That is exactly
right. I love that.
This country plans for earthquakes down to the vending machines opening with no money.
Amazing.
And of course, and nobody is like I said, there's like in New Zealand there was rioting and people were stripping the stores, but there's none of this going on in Japan. I also have friends in Tokyo. I have people all along the coast. I lived in Japan until I was 18, and I went to school there, and so this is my home technically. I go back and forth. But it's just they are prepared down to the last item.
They had it all covered, except they never planned for a 9.0 followed by a tsunami near the nuclear plants, and that's what's wiping them out right now. But you know what? It has been widely reported, and I'm really grateful to hear you confirm this and add that vending machine wrinkle, which I'd not heard before, that the well-known calm and mannerly demeanor of the Japanese is uninterrupted by this national disaster. And it really is amazing how they behave over there. I think there's a lesson to be drawn for all of us in that sort of thing.
There is, and thank you for taking my call.
Thank you so much. It's good to hear some good news about your loved ones there. Chris, you're in Winter Park on BHL. Good morning at 8:26, Chris.
Hey, good morning, Bud. I think that you have gotten caught up in the media hype on the nuclear power plants. The meltdown that you're describing would be considered a partial meltdown, not the China syndrome meltdown that everyone's so terrified of, the Chernobyl-type disaster. The Chernobyl-type disaster is impossible with these particular power plants. The worst thing that could happen, the worst-case scenario in this case, is that the power plants reactors, there's several reactors in each power plant, that the power plant reactors would be ruined and that they wouldn't be able to be restarted.
Apparently that's definitely true because corrosive seawater has been poured on them in great quantities, and apparently already, you can kiss those particular reactors goodbye. Yeah. You sound like you have some real expertise here, Chris. Believe me, I'm not trying to engage in hype. I'm giving you, from the best credible news sources I have, the information that is coming our way. Please know I'm not into hyping this on my own.
The problem is that all of these sort of quote-unquote credible news sources, like most mainstream media news sources, have so many factual and technical errors in them.
What is your expertise on nuclear power, Chris? What is your expertise on nuclear power?
That I've been studying energy and nuclear and green energy, all these things for years. I've worked a little bit in industry, but the main point of what I want to get across is that the reports that you're reading about these Type 2 reactors are completely inaccurate from pretty much any media source. There was a New York Times article a couple of days ago that had a factual error in every single paragraph.
Well, I'll be as careful with all of this as I possibly can be, Chris. Yeah, and boy, I got to tell you, nobody would be happier than the Bud Man if a lot of the doomsday reports out there proved that they were, in fact, inaccurate, exaggerated, or both. Thank you, Chris, so much. Open Mind Monday, shorter version because of our quake coverage here. Until 9 o'clock, your phone calls on any topic. Could be the quake, could be Sunrail, high-speed rail, the new angles on that, the Florida pension situation, the new angles I brought you on that, or whatever you want to talk about. It's your show till 9 o'clock. Don't miss the opportunity. Join me right now, and you'll be on the radio in minutes, taking over the show. Your take on any topic. 407-916-5400, an abbreviated Open Mind Monday at 8:29 on BHL. Late start on the great BHL tradition. Mondays in the 8 o'clock hour. You take over the show on Open Mind Monday because of special Japan earthquake coverage here. 407-916-5400. Certainly we can talk about anything associated with the quake, the whole situation with these nuclear plants, the disaster in general, how you're reacting to it, any personal stories you may have of family connections or whatever to people in Japan. We already had one of those phone calls. Sunrail, high-speed rail, you name it. Pensions, we've been talking about it all. But, hey, you choose the topic, and let's go. Whether I've talked about it or not, lock horns with a Budman at 407-916-5400. Rick from Lakeland, good morning. You're on Open Mind Monday.
Good morning, Bud. But I'll be quick. I'm glad I'm following Chris and his positive attitude. I just want to point out that if Japan, a nation that is quake-oriented, they can do what they've done, and this is going to happen. There's going to be earthquakes. There's going to be problems on this planet. But they took the initiative, and I'm really hoping that a positive approach from some of our politicians will get us going. We're big enough as a nation. We know where the faults are in this country. We know where we should build. We know where we can build. The example I'll give, the one you know about, I'm sure, Savannah River Project, Aiken, South Carolina, late 40s, early 50s. Plutonium producer. As long as it was open, DuPont built this. As long as it was open, there was never a leak, never a problem, because it was done correctly. And it was built there for a reason. And they closed it a few years ago, and the record was perfect. And I'm hoping Chris is thinking, you're thinking, we can still get these politicians moving, because there's areas we can do this that's going to be very positive for the entire nation, for the entire world. We have the technology. We can get this done, and I'm really hoping this is not used, and you're right, it will be, by the politicians.
Oh, listen, listen, Rick, I said it right away. Look at how Deepwater Horizon in the Gulf, the oil spill, has been used by the Obama administration to drive his agenda to get us off fossil fuels and into his alternative energy, all tied into the global warming nonsense, etc., as opposed to doing what the country desperately needs done, and that's to fire all the guns toward energy independence. And now this is going to be used in the same way. I'm not saying there aren't things we can learn and need to learn from the unfolding nuclear plant disaster in Japan. There's no question about it. But this cannot kill nuclear power. Just at the time when nuclear power was coming back to life in this country, when there was even money in the Obama budget for nuclear power plant incentives, for crying out loud. We've got to go ahead with this.
We need to stop listening to this administration, Bud. Period.
Well, that's hard to do, you know. I mean, they've right now still got their reins on power in the White House and in the United States Senate. You can't stop listening to them, and they don't care if you stop listening to them. If you stop listening to them, they're just going to do more of what they want than if you push back against them. And we already know from the amazing story of the Tea Party movement and reflected in these new majorities in the House of conservative Republicans that pushback works. So you got to stay engaged here, Rick. Don't stop listening to them.
That's correct.
All right, my friend. Thank you. 407-916-5400. Open Mind Monday at 8:39. Pete, you're on.